It's all about storage, because at the end of the day, we all need more of it, don't we? And of course, it needs to look good. So I built this cute little indoor storage chest that's super simple to build in just one day. Do you want one too? Follow me and lass uns anfangen.
There's dirt on my hands, strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
I went to Home Depot to go through the lumber piles to find the best looking pieces. I decided to go with 6 redwood fence pickets, each 268, for the lids and the leg. For the sides, I purchased 6 1x4 boards, each 525. And for the bottom, I purchased 2 1x6 boards, each cost $7.87. I also bought one 1x2 board to create a lip that the bottom will sit on. This one cost me $1.75, with a grand total of about $65. You will also need a few hinges to attach the lid to the chest. I used 3 hinges that I had saved from an old cabinet that was tossed a while back. You also need some brad nails, glue, a few screws, paint, and a finish. I started the project by cutting the pieces to size. For that, I used my miter saw. I cut 12 shorter boards for the side pieces and 12 longer boards for the front and back of the chest. To not have to measure each piece, I attached a stop block onto the fence of the miter saw. Like this, I only have to measure one time and get the same length piece each time with each cut. Once I had all the pieces cut to length, I took them over to the table saw to clean up the edges to make all the boards the same width. As you can tell, some of the boards were a little wider than others. I took the most narrowest board and cut all the other boards the same width. This step is important to end up with equal sides once you assemble the chest. I did not like the boards coming together with a square edge, so I decided to take my hand router and round over the edges to give it a nice little feature. So the pieces will look something like this. During the assembly, the pieces will only be glued together on the ends. The sides will only touch. Most likely, there will be some wood movement in the future, and the round over edges will hide any imperfections. This just seemed like a never-ending task. I had 24 pieces with 4 edges each, so I had to round over 96 edges. Funny to see I had my router table set up just behind me, which would have been much easier on my wrist. But oh well, I guess at least I have my arm workout of the day in. And then it was time to do some sanding. Apparently, YouTube has an issue with female enjoying the task of sanding. Not only have my videos been demonetized for a long time now, but too many strikes will close down my channel and I like to keep going, so I guess I behaved this time and just don't have fun while sanding. So, enjoy the boring, daunting task of sanding. This just sucks. Meike, behave. It's harder to behave than I thought. I just want to move and have fun. I don't know what's wrong with that. It's not fair. Okay, maybe just a little. I just can help myself. Nein. Ja. Nein. Ja. Nein. Verflucht, jetzt hör doch mal auf. Okay, vielleicht ein bisschen. Maybe a little bit. Reiß dich doch mal zusammen. Behave. I guess that's enough sanding. And now, since we barely made it through the boringness of sanding, let's continue by cutting the pieces for the lid and legs to size. If you remember, I had bought the redwood fence pickets for this. I used my table saw to clean up the edges of the boards, just like I did previously. I'm sure I've already talked about it in a previous video, but I did lose my push stick, and ever since I've been using this wood stick that I found. I'm overdue of building my own, especially since I've never done one. I saw this model where it looks like a hand with one finger cut off. I thought it was kind of funny. What do you think? Has this model of push stick already been overdone, or is it still cool to have? I don't know, sometimes I feel like I live behind the moon and just don't know what's trendy anymore. Not that I care about trends, but I also don't want to put efforts into building something that's completely out of style. Or does it make it cool again? Anyways, those are the pieces that I cut. Okay, so in the beginning I said this will be a one-day project, But since I use paint, there is some drying time involved. You can choose differently, so you don't have to wait for the paint to dry. Also, there is some paint that dries within 45 minutes. You pick your battles. I started my day early, so I had enough time for the paint and glue ups to dry while I took a very long lunch break. I chose a very thick paint, so I only had to apply one coat on each side. While the paint was drying, I glued up all the redwood lumber pieces, that being the lid of the chest and the side pieces that will be the corners and legs of the chest. To hold it all together, I used Tidebond 3 glue and a bunch of clamps. Clamps is definitely one of those things I can never have enough of. And they're expensive. I don't even know why they're so expensive. If I see a sale of clamps somewhere, I always make sure to get some. Also in the past, I've built a bunch of pipe clamps. They have always been worth their money. However, I've had some issues with rust being in Florida, and they need some deep cleaning. After a long lunch break, I came back to demold all of the pieces. And now it was time to start the assembly of the pieces. Like mentioned before, this is not an outdoor chest. It's meant for indoors, so it won't be sitting in the harsh elements. Wood glue and bread nails will do for the majority of the assembly. I wanted to keep the chest build as easy of a build as possible, but still look great. Also, I did not want any visible pocket holes. With me being the queen of pocket holes, this was a no-go for this project. I had to hold back on them. But in the end, if you don't trust wood glue and bread nails, you can also use screws. Just make sure you screw them in for the inside and put them in a straight line, otherwise you won't have a visually pleasing end result. And this is side number 1. Let's build the same exact one more time. And then I added the front and back pieces to connect it all together. This is starting to look great. Make sure you add enough wood glue, and then use the bread nailer to connect it and hold it all in place. I flipped the piece over to the opposite side to attach the rest of the back panels, since it's much easier to work like that. I placed the last panels in place, but before I used the bread nailer to attach them, I made sure the chest is square. The easiest way to do so is to measure the distance from corner to the opposite side corner across, like measure the distance from the left bottom corner to the top right corner, and then measure the distance from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. Both need to be the same distance to be square. Once I had it all squared out, I attached the panels with the bread nailer. And just like that, the outside of the box is done. I had to cut off a bit of the depth of the lid to make it fit perfectly. Then I attached it with the hinges. As mentioned earlier, I did not have to pay for the hinges. I saved them from an old piece of furniture. I have the habit of saving screws and hardware from old furniture pieces, so anytime someone gets ready to toss something, I make sure I come by and save what I can. Does this make me a hardware hoarder? I would say I'm just extremely frugal and don't like to spend money if I don't have to. Therefore, I like to reuse and recycle where I can. Now I like to say we are fertig, but we are not. The bottom is still missing. And a chest with no bottom can make things disappear. Just like that. Meike, where did you go? Oh my god, she's gone. Hello? Huh, just kidding, I'm back. That was probably the cheesiest trick I could have done. Anyways, before I started with the bottom, I used the piece that I had cut off the lid earlier and cut it into 3 little pieces lengthwise. Those pieces I glued and bread nailed in place on the inside of the lid to give it a little bit more stability. This is not a must, but I had the pieces left over, so why not use them? Then I worked on building a lip so the bottom floor pieces will be held in place. For that I used the 1x2 and cut it to length with my miter saw, before cutting the pieces right down the middle on my table saw to end up with 2 identical pieces. Those pieces I pre-drilled and attached to the bottom using screws for ones. Like mentioned before, this lip will hold the floorboard pieces in place. To make things easier, I decided to flip the chest onto its side before screwing in the pieces. I laid the floorboards onto the bottom lip and used the bread nailer to hold the pieces in place. Now all that's missing is the finish. For that, I used a furniture finish that, like always, I will link in the description below the video. I purchased this off Amazon, and it's a knockoff of the Ruby Monocoat, much cheaper, and I like the outcome just as much. Nope, hold your horses there, Meike. Let's not get in trouble in the last few minutes of the video. This finish has a 3:1 mixing ratio. Make sure you measure it correctly. I applied this finish to the inside and outside of the lid, to the legs, and the floorboard of the box. Anything that I have painted before did not need the finish, because really the paint is the finish. And we are fertig! Wow, another awesome project. What do you think? Please like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, click the bell button to get notified of new videos. If you can, please join my Patreon. This helps me create more YouTube videos. Just click the My Socials link in the description below. I love the color combination. And the box can really be more customized. You can engrave something on the top, you can glue letters to the sides. There's so much you can do with this box. And if ever needed, it's big enough to store me away. See you next Friday. Tschüss!